The Black Sun and the Real Society. Peter Moon tells us in his book, The Black Sun, on page 172, the Real Society began around the same time as the Thule Society, when Karl Haushofer founded the Brüder des Licht, which means Brothers of the Light. This organization is sometimes referred to as the Luminous Lodge, or the Illuminati. This group was eventually renamed the Real Gesellschaft, as it rose in prominence and united three major societies: the Lords of the Black Stone, having emerged from the Teutonic Order in 1917, the Black Knights of the Thule Society, and the Black Sun, later identified as the elite of the Heinrich Himmler SS. Whereas the Thule Society ended up focusing primarily upon materialistic and political agendas, the Real Society put its attention on the other side, quote-unquote. A local medium named MariaOrsic. This is the picture of this blonde girl that we see here. And by the way, William Tompkins, who talks about the secret space programs and that he was the engineer designing the aircraft carriers for the Navy and also the airships for the secret space program, tells us that his secretary, who was telepathic, looked just like this MariaOrsic. And he claims that they were also of some kind of another humanoid extraterrestrial race. But you'll see his videos on the internet if you could find him. William Tompkins. Now, local medium, this MariaOrsic, in the picture that we have here, began getting messages in an unknown language and could not transcribe them, so began meeting with key members of these societies along with another medium named Sigrun. And accordingly, the messages were coming from a being from the star Aldebaran, which has two planets from which the Sumerian Empire came. In the Sumerian Empire were two classes of people: the Aryan, or master race, and a subservient race which had developed in a negative fashion as a result of mutation from climate changes, they said. Peter Moon goes on to say, 500 million years ago, the Aryans, known as the Elohim or Elder race, began to colonize our solar system. As Aldebarans became uninhabitable, Marduk existed in what is today the asteroid belt, was the first to be colonized, then Mars. When they came to Earth, these Aryans were known as the Sumerians. Note here, we're coinciding with the work of Zecharia Sitchin. And then they go into Shambhala. Now, Shambhala, we have been told, is a spiritual existence of where we can attain spiritual heights. Anyway, this Shambhala, from some of the accounts available, Shambhala appears to have been a center of spiritual enlightenment, very reminiscent of James Hilton's Shangri-La. But others say it was a center of occult power and arcane teaching. Its leader was thought variously to be either an evil, tyrannical sorcerer king of a godlike lord of the world type of thing, or we seem to be left with a choice as to which story we prefer to follow, and evidently which path one desires to follow too, the evil left or the good right. Apparently there were two factions, as in Hyperborea, one of which followed the Golden Sun and the other the Black Sun. The Black Sun, incidentally, was a prominent emblem for the Nazi mythos, as was the swastika. Now, the swastika symbol was very ancient. We even have it in engravings in ancient Greek temples and columns. And when we asked one of the curators of the museum what it meant, he said it was a sign for peace. But anyway, let's go back to this. According to Jean-Claude Frère, author of Nazisme et Société Secrète, that's Secret Society's Nazism, the people of Hyperborea, the upper north, after the Arctic, after migrating to the Gobi Desert over 6,000 years, founded a new center which they named Agartha. It became a great center for world learning, and people flocked there from all over the world to enjoy its culture and civilization. However, a huge catastrophe supervened, and the Earth's surface was devastated, but the realm of Agartha somehow survived under the Earth. The legend continues to relate that, as with the original Hyperboreans, the Aryans now split into two factions, one group heading northwest, hoping to return to their lost Hyperborea, and the second going south, where they founded a new secret center under the Himalayas. Jean-Claude Frère says, the sons of the outer intelligence is split into two groups, one following the right-hand path under the wheel of the golden sun, and the other left-hand path under the wheel of the black sun. The first preserved the center of Agartha, that undefined place of contemplation of the good and of the real force. The second supposedly created a new place of initiation at Shambhala, the city of violence in command of the elements and human masses, hastening the arrival of the charnel house of time. According to Peter Moon, in his book The Black Sun, the ultimate concept of the Thule is well represented in the myth of it as the capital city or center of the Hyperborea, a word which literally means beyond the poles. Actually, in Greek, it means beyond the north. Vorea is north. And it's beyond the poles. Hyperborea is positioned as being outside of this dimension, and Thule, being in its center, is positioned as the source of all life on Earth. In Greek mythology, Pythagoras was taught sacred geometry by Apollo, the god, a god who was identified as a resident of Hyperborea. In Pythagorean teachings, the Earth itself geometrically unfolds from a void in the center, and this void has been recognized by many ancient groups, including the Sumerians, as the black sun. In this sense, Thule is synonymous with this black sun. The word swastika itself means source, among other identifications, and represents eternal cause for the fountain of creation. And accordingly, the Thule Society used swastika symbols in their log to represent this idea. Okay, I just wanted to, again, Hyperborea means, Hyperborea means really way up high north. Vorea means north, Notia means south. Okay, Notia is south. Vorea is north, Notia is south in Greek. So this is definitely north. Hyperborea, way up north. If it was south, they would say Notia. So they don't relate to north, to south. They relate to north here. The black sun is an even more esoteric concept than that of Thule, represented as the void of creation itself. It's the most archetype imaginable. Thus, this namesake was reversed for the elite of the Thule Society, or was reserved for the elite of the Thule Society. The Black Sun was actually a secret society within the Thule Society. It was senior to other societies. And we have here various images of Hindu and the sacred Om, which is the sign of the swastika. Also in West Yorkshire, stones showing this, or a little bit more elaborate. And we find also the Aztec calendar, cycle of 52, uncorrected years representing the form of left rotation swastika, and the wheels start with the year 1 Akatl, and then turn to the 2 Tekpatl, 3 Kali, 4 Toshli, 5 Akatl, etc. And there's good explanation to the whole composition in Durin and Seller. And the question is, did the Hopi Indians of the native tribes of North America have a real writing system like the Aztecs? And did they share the same calendar around the year 1000? Now, why do they not have a developed writing in the 17th century? Well, they supposedly had Chaldean, but it was the chiefs that knew how to write it and read it. Now, also we have various Hopi, Christian, Malta, Tibet, Ceylon, China, Japan, Islam, Lapland, Hindu, Celt, Bali, Aztec, Jain, Greek, and Jewish, all these similar symbols. Now, after World War II and the subsequent occupation of Germany, Allied military commanders were stunned to discover the penetrating depth of the regime's state secrets. The world's best intelligence organization was not the least of these revelations. Also discovered were massive and meticulous research file on secret societies eugenics, and other scientific pursuits that boggled the imagination of the Allied command. Even more spectacular was an entire web of underground rocket and flying saucer factories, with an accompanying technology that still defies ordinary beliefs. A missing U-boat fleet, possessing the most advanced submarine technology in the world, left many wondering if the Nazis had escaped with yet more secrets, or even with Hitler himself. And behind all of these mysteries was an even deeper element, a secret order known to initiates as the Order of the Black Sun, an organization so feared that it is now illegal to even print their symbols and insignia in modern Germany. The Black Sun probes deeper into the secrets of the Third Reich and its Tibetan contacts than any other previous attempt. That the Black Sun is an adventure in consciousness that reveals a vast array of new information. From the German flying saucer program to the SS mission into Tibet, we are led on a path that gives us the most significant and insightful look ever into the Third Reich and the holy relics they sought in their ultimate quest, the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were a variety of secret occult societies in Germany, the main ones being the Bavarian Illuminati, the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, the Thule Society, and the Vril Society. Each of these 5 societies, although based in secrecy and mysticism, had its role and function, and of these 5, 2 were especially noted for their occult connections, the Vril Society and its purely German offshoot, the Thule Society. The chief architect of the Thule Society was Baron Rudolf von Sebottendorf, sometimes referred to as Rudolf Goller. Sebottendorf, Goller, possessed a wide knowledge of Islamic mysticism in all its aspects, encompassing the dervish sects, and particularly the cult of Sufism, which differs markedly from mainstream Islamic teaching. The Thule. The name Thule refers to the capital of the legendary polar country Hyperborea, meaning upper north. We said Voria is north in Greek, Notia is south. Hyperborea is north. Also referred to as the Ultima Thule, it was supposedly the gateway to another world. Thule was therefore recognized as a place where humans could, by whatever means, quote-unquote, leave the earth. It also reputedly stood at the portal of Hollow Earth, the Hollow Earth. Interestingly, the major players in the 20th century, the US and Russia Federation, have ELF, that's extra low frequency transmitters sited in this area. These transmitters are supposedly used to communicate with submerged submarines, but wrongly they broadcast these messages at brainwave wave frequencies around 18 to 20 hertz. Traditionally, the Hyperboreans were in contact with extraterrestrials or alien cultures. In some version of this, there was interbreeding, and in common with the legendary inhabitants of Atlantis, they engaged in war with neighboring civilizations. Now, this is in parallel with what the Emerald Tablets and Thoth the Atlantean talked about. Also what Manly P. Hall talks about. And also what William Tompkins talks about. Now, this escalated into the use of atomic weapons, resulting in the Pyrrhic victory for the Hyperboreans. In other words, they sort of nullified each other out, who as well as, that's my comment, who as well as defeating their enemies virtually destroyed themselves in the process. In common with radiation damage in recent times, the surviving Hyperboreans were soon faced with the prospect of mutated and otherwise damaged offspring. Showing remarkable resolve, those who had not sustained any apparent genetic damage band together and effectively removed themselves from the gene pool, a variety of self-imposed quarantine. Any damaged offspring from this group were neutered. And this early example of eugenics was practiced until they were sure that any defective genes had been bred out. The other mutated group eventually died out. Whether they were assisted in this is open to debate. This may seem like, and indeed is, a harsh clinical line to adopt, but being faced with the extinction of the entire race, they had little other option. The descendants of this seminal mother race, quote-unquote, were the Celts, who, like the ripples on a pond, spread out, colonizing various northern areas of the planets. Scots, Irish, Basques, Spanish, Scandinavians, Icelanders, and the Portuguese, all these people are of Celtic origin. These disparate nationalities have one common genetic trait, a large percentage of Rh-negative blood types, which according to the beliefs of the Thule Society was a characteristic of the Hyperboreans and their extraterrestrial associates. In recent times, the majority of alien abductees are reportedly from Rh-negative blood groups. Is this a possible indication that UFO cultures are tracking their crossbreed progeny? Other races and peoples who possess a positive blood type were considered to be racially impure, as positive blood is thought to be contaminated by contact with the ape-evolved strands of human DNA. Quote, in Germany, at the turn of the century, and particularly after World War I, many secret societies developed. One of the groups was the Vril Society. In 1917, 4 people met in a cafe in Vienna. There was 1 woman and 3 men. The woman was a spiritual medium, quote-unquote. They met under the veil of mystery and secrecy. They discussed secret revelations, the coming of the New Age, the sphere of destiny, the magical, violent black stone, the making contact with ancient peoples and distant worlds. Their source of power was the black sun, an infinite beam of light which thought, though invisible to the naked eye, is real and there. The real emblem was the black sun, a secret philosophy thousands of years old, provided the foundation on which the occult practitioners of the Third Reich would later build. The black sun symbol can be found in many Babylonian and Assyrian places of worship. They depicted the black sun, the Godhead's inner light, in the form of a cross. This was not much different from the German Knight's Cross. With supposed channeling information from ETs, the Vril Society built the Vril machine. It was a saucer-shaped thing. It was supposedly an interdimensional or time travel machine. The first piloted flight was in 1934. The Vril Force of the Black Sun. In Litton's The Coming Race, the subterranean people use the Vril Force to operate and govern the world. A few children armed with Vril power rods are said capable of exterminating the race of over 22 million threatening barbarians. Served by robots and able to fly on Vril-powered wings. The vegetarian Vril Ya are, by their own reckoning, racially and culturally superior to everyone else on Earth above or below the ground. At one point, the narrator concludes from linguistic evidence that the Vril Ya have, quote, descended from the same ancestors as the great Aryan family, from which in varied streams has flowed the dominant civilization of the world, end quote. The Vril force, or Vril energy, is said to be derived from the black sun, a big ball of prima materia, which supposedly exists in the center of the earth, giving light to the Vril Ya and putting out radiation in the form of Vril. The Vril Society believed that Aryans were the actual biological ancestors of the black sun. This force was known to the ancients under many names, and it has been called Chi, Ojas, Vril, Astral Light, Odic forces, and Orgon. In a discussion of the 20th degree of the ancient and accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry called Knight of the Sun or Prince Adept, Albert Pike said, quote, there is nature in one most potent force, by means whereof a single man who could possess himself of it should know how to direct it, could revolutionize and change the face of the world, end quote. This is the force that the Nazis and their inner occult circle were so desperately trying to unleash upon the world, for which the Vril Society had apparently groomed Hitler, a manifestation of great work, quote-unquote, promulgated by the adepts of secret society throughout the ages. The Vril Society latched on to a very old archetype already in the minds of alchemists and magicians, which was only reinterpreted by Litton in light of that age of occult revival and scientific progress. The idea of mutation and transformation into a higher form of a God-man was envisioned through the Vril Ya in Buller Lytton's The Coming Race. Lytton himself was an initiate of the Rosicrucians and was well versed in the arcane esoteric philosophies and of course the greatest advances in the sciences of his day. J. Bergier says, through his romantic works of fiction, he expressed a conviction that there are beings endowed with superhuman powers. These beings will supplant us and bring about formidable mutation in the elect of the human race. End quote. This is where the philosophy turns dangerous. The moment we speak of an elect and illuminated class, which is above the general populace, you inevitably encounter racism and classism, with fascism in due course. Quote, we must beware of this notion of mutation, Bergier warns. It crops up again with Hitler and is not extinct today, end quote. Bergier and Powell's were writing in 1960, but today this philosophy is sadly once again in the forefront of popular culture. The New World Order, so vehemently opposed, is under the direct influence and guidance of the New Age movement. The hodgepodge of occult doctrines and dangerous socialism which hides under a cover of spiritual enlightenment. Theosophy is considered the main foundation, and its founder, Madame Blavatsky, was a great admirer of Lytton's. In The Occult Conspiracy, the excellent researcher Michael Howard writes about the compatibility of the two philosophies. Blavatsky had read Bulwer Lytton's novels and was very impressed by their occult content, especially Zanoni and the Last Days of Pompeii. The latter was published in 1834 and dealt with the time between early Christianity and mysteries of Isis in Italy in the 1st century AD. Blavatsky's esotericism was virtually anti-Christian, virulently anti-Christian. The racial ideas of Madame Blavatsky concern root races and emergence of a spiritually developed type of human being in the Aquarian Age were avidly accepted by the 19th century German nationalists who mixed theosophical occultism with anti-Semitism and the doctrine of the racial supremacy of the Aryans or Indo-European peoples. Excerpt from Blavatsky's book titled Isis Unveiled, Volume 1, page 550, says this tradition of the dragon and the sun, occasionally replaced by the moon, has awakened echoes in the remotest parts of the world. It may be accounted for with perfect readiness by the once universal heliolatrous religion, those who worship the sun. There was a time when Asia, Europe, Africa, and America were covered with temples sacred to the sun and the dragon. The priests assumed the names of their deities, and thus the tradition spread like a network all over the globe. Quote, Bel and the dragon are uniformly coupled together, and the priest of the Ophite religion has as uniformly assumed the name of his god, end quote. And page 551 says, Kircher places the origin of the Ophite and the heliolatrous sun worshippers, the shape of conical monuments and the obelisks with the Egyptian Hermes Trismegistus, that's Thoth or Thoth. She goes on to say that one finds glimpses of this religion and its origins in the Book of Hermes, in magical art reproduced by the Quiches, and even in fragments of Popul Vuh, which shows that the evidence of its origins and religious customs of the Mexicans, Peruvians, and other American races are nearly identical with those of the ancient Phoenicians, Babylonians, and Egyptians. That said, she relates the religion of the Quiche cosmogony and compares it to some apocrypha with the Jewish sacred books and Kabbalistic theories of creation, including the Book of Jasher, which traces it to the population of Ur and the Cassians, where Magism flourished before the days of Abraham. In page 549, the divine beings, brought down to the level of human nature, perform no feats or tricks more strange or incredible than the miraculous performance of Moses and of Pharaoh's magicians, the miracle with the snakes, while many of these are exactly similar in their nature. A woman who calls herself White Feather contacted us in the year 1999. She sent us drawings of a black sun, and some of which is said is this. Originally, when White Feather saw the black sun, the only thing she could think of is calling it was the donut sun, D-O-N-U-T. Quote, I moved to Lexington, Kentucky in May 1973. I had been hired by some horse people in Hialeah, Florida, and they moved me up there to be director of research for their horse sales farm, for their firm. Sometime before that, I didn't know if it was a year or more, I had a dream or a vision finding myself in a natural tree cathedral. And one day, at my new house in Lexington, the kids kicked a ball into a bunch of trees, and I realized that I was in the tree cathedral. It was a circle of Ig fir trees, but anyway, that proved that I was supposed to move there. I have had physical experiences ever since I was a child. Of the drawings I made of the black ringed sun, they were different shapes more or less than other people told me they had seen. And what I saw, the green light and yellow light, translucent fluorescent sun flares, was impossible for me to draw." End quote. Oddly, she ended up having coffee with a Native American who had also seen the black sun, the person who serves her donuts. She originally thought of the sun as the eye in the sky, eye of Ra, the sun god perhaps. She said, "After I met a man who was part Apache, who told me he had seen the sun when he thought he was dying in Vietnam, I decided to call it the lifesaver sun. It seemed this sun is what the Indians call the feathered sun, an extremely sacred sign." From an illustrated encyclopedia of traditional symbols, it says the feathered sun, the black sun, as a Plains Indian symbol with stylized feathers pointing towards both inwards and outwards, inward towards the center and outwards toward the circumference. It combines the symbols of the sun and the eagle and depicts the universe, the center, solar power, radiation of power, and majesty. Now, this is an article by D. Finney from Great Dreams, and it's by Humans Are Free, Alexander Light. As for their success in finding the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail, obviously they had no success. How can they have any success finding holy artifacts and holy things when they're dwelling in dark spiritual forces? Anyway, tell me what you think about all this. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.